what idiot pays taxes on crypto? You put it on a wallet, you fly out of the airport, you sell it, you don't tell anybody. What do you say to those people?
Rather than jumping through all these contortions, trying to figure out how to minimize your taxes or the like, how about just don't sell it?
For me, I tell people, if you're living in the US, if you're living in a Western country, regulations are going to increase, taxes are going to increase. They've got people coming who they want to leave. They're paying big tax bills to take their crypto and leave. But then the crypto anarchists, as you say, what idiot pays taxes on crypto? You put it on a wallet, you fly out of the airport, you sell it, you don't tell anybody. What do you say to those people?
My view here is that if you're really smart, first, let's talk about wealth creation, wealth preservation. The richest families in the world, the way they got rich is they created assets or they purchased assets and they held them forever and they never sold them. There's no, John Malone never wants to pay capital gains tax. You never pay long-term capital gains, short-term capital gains. And then they don't generate income. They have appreciating assets and they borrow against them. They mortgage them. They mortgage their buildings. They buy a football team and they borrow against the football team. They borrow against their art. Whatever it is, you buy the highest quality asset, you hold it forever, and then you borrow money, and then there's no tax on money you borrowed. That's not income, no income tax. And there's no tax on the asset because you never sold it. So rather than jumping through all these contortions, trying to figure out how to minimize your taxes or the like, how about just don't sell it? Right now, what do you have to do to not sell it? You have to buy the best asset. If you buy the pristine, most technically pure, long duration asset, there's no reason to ever sell Bitcoin. You could give it to your grandchildren in a vault. It should last for 100 years, 1,000 years, right? It transcends a company, a country. If I have $100 million and I have it in land in California, California can tax it and I can't move it. I will have to sell it at some point. I'm going to get taxed on it. If I buy $100 million worth of stocks, right? I'm stuck on the New York Stock Exchange, or I'm stuck with a custodian. I've got all those regulations, and maybe income tax on the company will impair me. Capital gains I can avoid if I don't sell it. But the problem is the company has competitive risk. And if the company becomes non-competitive, you might have to sell it because the company's not a monopoly on pure money. But what's the best asset I can buy? Pure monetary energy. There's no CEO, there's no company, there's no product, there's no iPhone 11 to not like. And by the way, if you move from California to Wyoming, now you got Wyoming state tax. When Wyoming changes their taxes, move to Florida. When Florida changes their taxes, move to Puerto Rico. When you don't like that, move to Singapore. By the way, if I have my gold in a bank in New York, it's kind of hard to move it to Singapore. But if I have my Bitcoin in a bank in New York, I can move it to Singapore in 30 minutes for $5. So the beauty of owning property in cyberspace is it can be moved at the speed of light or near the speed of light for almost no cost. That means that the number of potential custodians goes up by orders of magnitude. All the custodians and counterparties are made much more honest because they have to treat you fairly. If somebody in Singapore will give you 8% interest on your Bitcoin, you can move it there in 30 minutes. If they change the rules and screw you over, you can take it back, right? You can't do that with gold. You can't do that with Apple stock. You can't do that with land in upstate New York. You can't do that with a bond, a piece of sovereign debt. You're held hostage by the bank or the counterparty, which has got a regulator, which has got a set of systems. And so therefore, the market optionality is much lower on every other type of property, and the likelihood you would have it impaired and you'd have to sell it is much higher. And so my answer is buy property that will never be impaired, that you will never have to sell, that is not subject to income tax, capital gains tax, employment tax, HIPAA tax, and it doesn't operate a business that requires import-export. Therefore, tariffs are not a threat to it. It has no competitors. If I took away all the moving parts, everything to break, what's left? One Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is Manhattan in cyberspace with 21 million city blocks. Every Bitcoin is a block. You can own a block in cyberspace, but it's better than Manhattan. It's like the best city in the world that every rich person will want to live in for 1,000 years, right? That's what that is. If I could give you a city block and the best city in cyberspace that's good for 1,000 years, why would your family ever sell it? Because every rich family I know in New York City, they're rich because their great grandfather bought a city block and they've been just handing it down. And when the bankers print 5% more money, the value of the land goes up by 5%, and they refinance the block and they take a loan, and you can do that forever. If your asset goes up 20% a year, and if your cost of living goes up 10% a year, you can loan or you can borrow against your asset forever, and your debt to equity ratio will fall, and you will never incur income tax. You will never incur capital gains tax, and you can do it from anywhere on earth. That's a better idea.
But perhaps we have a bit of a disagreement on moving the goal, but I do understand the counterparty. What I think about crypto that I want to ask you about, the government's always behind. What you are hearing now is you're hearing about wealth taxes. You're hearing about Janet Yellen wants unrealized capital gains taxes. People say, we'll just borrow against it, never sell it, pass it down. What happens when South Africa comes along and says 7% a year, we want to take our piece off the top, or we're going to tax your unrealized gains? Is that something that you think is coming, and what do you do then?
I think the best thing you can do is make sure that you're mobile. And if you're not mobile, make sure your property is mobile, right? Own the most mobile liquid property on earth. What would that be? Think about it. What is the single most mobile, tangible property you can own on earth? More mobile than sovereign debt, more mobile than cash, more mobile than gold, more mobile than a house in the Hamptons, more mobile than timberland, more mobile than oil contracts or natural gas fields or ships, yachts. What's more mobile than any of those things? More mobile than shares of stock, more mobile than bonds, more mobile than derivatives. I just named $500 trillion worth of stuff, Andrew. What's more mobile than that?
You're going to say Bitcoin, right? So if you were starting over, would you start MicroStrategy in the United States, knowing where the U.S. is today?
Well, I think that's a different issue, right? I mean, you start a company based upon where you want to be to attract the right employees. We put MicroStrategy in Northern Virginia because we wanted to hire engineers. Without the engineers, there'd be no company. Sometimes, so a company needs human capital. After that, you need financial capital. Well, being a U.S.-based company, we were able to go public on the NASDAQ. If we were, based in another country, Switzerland, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So we had good access to people. We had good access to financial capital. We had better access to customers. Most of our customers were on the Eastern Seaboard. That's why we did it. So I think you put your company where you need it to be in order to produce the thing that you're going to produce, to sell to the customers you're going to sell to. And sometimes there are some jurisdictions that are better than others. But I tell you one thing for sure, if Bitcoin existed, I would have bought more Bitcoin. But look, Bitcoin didn't exist in its current form until 2020 or late 2020. It's only matured as a digital monetary network since March. Right now, you can look at it and say, there are $100 billion type entities that have all adopted Bitcoin as their standard monetary network, and they feel comfortable with it, and they're going to defend it. And I couldn't have said that 2 years ago. So Bitcoin's a new thing, and it's a new monetary system. I would say, regardless of where you put your company, you should plug your company into Bitcoin. The beauty of Bitcoin is you can plug a company in Switzerland or Haiti or Singapore or Malta or anywhere on earth into Bitcoin, and you will get the benefits of the most intelligent capital, wherever that might be. If you buy Bitcoin in Alabama and you just hodl it, you put it in a cold storage wallet and forget about it, and someone in Singapore comes up with a derivatives exchange that's able to trade and finance and is the best crypto bank on the universe, and it attracts hundreds of billions of dollars of capital, that Singapore crypto bank will drive up the price of Bitcoin for you in Alabama, and you will end up rich because of something happening around the world in a different country, a different language, a different jurisdiction while you're sleeping. That's the beauty of Bitcoin. It's global, it's open, permissionless. Anybody can do something to help it. It's going to be improved by the highest common denominator, not the lowest common denominator. And it's happening very, very rapidly. That's the secret to it being the apex asset that's outgrowing everything else in the last decade.
A couple more questions. One phrase of yours that I love: stability is stagnation. And you've talked about things like gold. You said if you want to keep your money in cash, it's 0% or even less now. Stability is stagnation. From my perspective, and I know some of our audience members wanted me to ask you this, to me, the US is the legacy brand, or the UK or Canada. These are the legacy brands that people they believe that they're stable. We would argue that they're less stable. Is there a case, would you ever look at moving to, living in, investing in, doing business in emerging markets that are less stable, including some of the basket cases that you mentioned?
Well, I think that one core requirement for a company to do well in any market is it has to be able to function in the currency of that market. And so if you're operating in a country with a collapsing currency, the Weimar Republic, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, it is hopeless. So no, if it's a collapsing currency, I wouldn't be doing business there. If it's merely a weak currency, well, we do business in 27 countries, so we're everywhere in the world right now, in Japan and Korea and Australia and the Emirates and in most European countries and most South American countries. We struggle in countries where the currency is collapsing more so. But otherwise, I think you just have to be open-minded to every opportunity.
You've mentioned Malta, UAE. Do you think that there will be countries that want to stake out a claim, particularly smaller countries, as being the most crypto-friendly to attract an ecosystem? Are there particular countries you see that are doing that?
I think so. I mean, I think you'll see countries embrace it more rapidly than other countries. I mean, the progressive ones, if your currency completely collapses and you're trying to build a new currency system, your choice is gold, the dollar, or Bitcoin. Well, if you do it in the dollar, then you have to get the dollars from the US, and so you kind of lost your sovereignty. If you wanted to create a sovereign currency that's backed by a tangible asset, I would think that Bitcoin would be the best one, because gold's not going to work for you, not in the 21st century. So I think you may see people reconstruct collapsed economies on Bitcoin. I think you'll see other progressive countries, Singapore or something that'll be crypto friendly because they want to lead in fintech. In digital assets, it's like the granite that you're going to build Manhattan on, right? If you're building a bank on an asset which moves at the speed of light, that is thermodynamically sound, that's programmable, you'll probably build a better, faster, stronger bank. In fact, we know you can. So countries that want to prosper are going to want to embrace this digital monetary network. Look, I see it like the internet or like electricity. You're like, well, you think this country will let us wire every house for electricity? I'm like, if they want to advance into the future, they will. How about running water? That would be a good idea. What happens if we don't have electricity and running water? Everybody dies and our houses are dark. So what happens if we have a country without functional money? You can't have a functioning economy without money that holds its value. So, if our currency collapses, we've either already de facto decided to operate on somebody else's currency, our neighbor's currency, or we better search for something new and different, because you can't build a functioning economy without a monetary system. And this one's the killer monetary network. It's going to be like Google times 100. It's just going to spread and spread and spread. And I think it'll just be a matter of time before companies and countries jump onto it.
In closing, any advice for Americans like yourself who are in the U.S.? A lot of people concerned now, incoming presidential administration. Are there going to be changes? Are there things people should do to prepare who are investing in your space in crypto?
Look, I think you should get educated on Bitcoin. If you go to hope.com, we have lots and lots of educational videos and materials and documents on it. I think that there's $400 trillion worth of monetary energy floating around the world, and half of it is eventually going to find its way into Bitcoin. So my advice is, this is the biggest thing that's happened in our lifetime, bigger than Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, bigger than the internet. And you're in the early days. Everybody needs it. Only 1% of the people understand it. Nobody can stop it. Right? It's the single most useful thing you can do to make your life better. So I would focus on it.
Are you politically agnostic, though, in saying that whomever's in power, you're okay? Any regulations or taxes, or they're coming to get you? You don't buy into that.
I think that that we're probably looking at a monetary environment where the money supply is going to expand. And everybody's working for cash, working for dollars or euros or some local fiat currency. And if they have assets probably invested in fiat derivatives like stocks and bonds and real estate. In an environment where I increase the money supply by a factor of 2, the purchasing power of all those things is cut in half. And so the single most important thing people need to focus on is how they're going to protect the purchasing power of their future cash flows. And how are they going to protect the wealth that they have already stored, right? And it doesn't matter who's in charge or which politicians are in charge. It's whether it's Republicans or Democrats or where you are. I can't name a country on earth that doesn't have a somewhat expansionary monetary policy right now. So this is an issue for everybody in every country.
We can find you on Twitter. You've got hundreds of thousands of followers. Hope.com you mentioned. Where else should we find you, Michael Saylor?
Best place is follow me on Twitter. I post all of my thoughts there on a daily or quasi basis, like Michael_Saylor. And otherwise, go to hope.com. Bitcoin is hope. HOPE.
Great domain name. I've been seeing you all over the place. You're on CNBC. You're everywhere. Michael Saylor, great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. All the best to everybody watching.
How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.